He has come to bring light into the darkness. He has
Those who haven't been, you're in for a treat.
Yes.
Once again, there's no set times for the sessions. We will go with the flow, or Rico will have a break when he needs one, and we'll just sit and enjoy what he brings from his heart. So let's have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you again for this wonderful time of fellowship and the time to gather around your word as we seek more revelation of you, our Messiah, and your kingdom. And Father, we just pray that you'll bless us with new revelation that we've not seen before. Open our hearts and minds to what you're showing us to. And we pray for your spirit, your ruach, to move amongst us and stir us up. And we pray, Father, for a double blessing for Rico. Thank you for his coming here. And we just pray for that for him now as he leads us and shares from your words. And we pray our hearts will stir and we'll jump with joy as we hear what you've got to say to us.
Yes.
We pray this in Yeshua's name.
Amen.
Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, let's get right into the teaching. We're going to talk about temple service today. One of the things that I've been studying for the last 17 years is really one of the areas that I'm passionate, really passionate about, that I spend a lot of time in, and I have a teacher, is about the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. And the temple, in my opinion, is one of the most neglected areas of study in all of the Hebrew roots or messianics or whatever you want to call it. Even the whole Christian world has been completely misinformed about the temple service. And then when we come into the understanding of the Torah and Yeshua and the Messiah, there's always a struggle to understand the temple service. You know, it's like there's so many types of arguments that arise, and and I'm going to make some statements that you may not agree with me, but what I really would like for you is to allow me the opportunity to share. You don't have to agree, it's okay. Just allow me the opportunity to share the information so that, at least you can compare. You can compare the information and come to a better understanding. Now, how many of you have read the whole letter to the Hebrews from beginning to end without stopping? That's a minority. Only a few people have read the whole letter of the book of Hebrews without stopping. That's a problem. Because each letter, and I'm going to try to take as much time as I can on this, I don't want to rush through it. Is that okay?
Yes.
Because I think it's important that we understand the temple service. With all the world events that are happening right now, it is imperative that we understand why the temple service is important for the end of times and for the recognition who the anti-Messiah will be. Okay? But if we do not understand the biblical evidence, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to be a lawyer today. I'm going to present it as law. I'm going to give you the evidence, and you let the evidence stand on itself. Fair enough? Okay, so only a few of you have read the whole letter to the Hebrews. It's a letter to who? To the Hebrews. Galatians is a letter to who? Ephesus, a letter to the Ephesians. Do you live in any of those countries? Do you speak Hebrew?
No. Really?
Do you live in Asia Minor, in Galatia? Now, I'm going to submit to you that the letters are letters of comfort, letters of correction. They're a part of Scripture, but they do have a context in its time frame when it was given that we never bothered to look into. The England of today is not the England of 100 years ago. The America of today surely is not the same America of 30 years ago. So how can we understand America if you've never been to America? If you've never talked to an American? You can only have an opinion about something if you've known about it firsthand. And many of us develop opinions about the Bible without understanding the background idiomatic expressions, culture, language. You know, I mean, to understand the letter of the Hebrews, have you ever considered finding out who the audience is, what the problem was, when did it happen, and have you considered studying the temple service in relation to the book of Hebrews? I mean, have you ever considered studying the book of Hebrews in the context of the Day of Atonement? See, so we're going to be having a tough time understanding the letter to the Hebrews, because first, we're not Hebrews. We're part of Israel, but I'm talking about ethnically. We're not Hebrews. You know, I'm descendant of the Levites, but many people are not Hebrews. So we don't even know what year the letter was written. We don't even know who the author was. We're not quite sure. So we don't know who the author is. We don't know what year it was written. We don't know the events happening around Jerusalem during the time when the letter was written. Obviously, it was written to the people in Israel because it's to the Hebrews. So what was going on around that time? And this is something that we never consider. So I want to take my time in the introduction to really establish a foundation. Then we are going to study chapter 7, chapters 8, verse by verse. In context. We're not going to extract one verse. There's only 3 verses that I'm not going to read in chapter 7 because it will take too long, something else. But we're going to read the verses in chapters 8 and chapters 9. And I want to show you, and at the end, I want you to tell me, Rico, that's the context of the letter. Fair enough?
Yes.
But before that, we have to establish a foundation. When we are in the system of religion, and if you still go to a Christian church, please don't be offended. I'm not judging the Christian people or trying to bash any religion. We're talking about the systems of religion. Fair enough?
Yes.
Every system of religion has a problem. Every denomination. How many Bibles do we have? How many scriptures is there? 1, right? They agree with me? 1. Right? Correct? Come on, guys. Listen. I went to bed early last night. I woke up at 1:15 and I could not fall asleep until 6.
Oh.
So today is one of those days that I need a lot of feedback.
Right.
Today, I mean, pretend you're Puerto Rican or something. Give me feedback, because if not, I ended up, like, dozing off. So, yeah, I just lost my train of thought, you see?
Context.
Okay, context. When we were in the systems of religion, they told us that the sacrificial system was done away with when Yeshua died. Right?
Yes.
So let's find out if that's true. Let's go to the book of Acts. Chapters 2. The book of Acts, we're going to take time, we're going to make it like a study. Because, listen, there's some things happening in America in regards to the priesthood that is creating massive confusion. And it amazes me that the people that are coming up with this crazy stuff, they don't study the temple. They don't study it. And I try to approach them and say, hey, have you considered looking into this? They says, no. I was like, how can we have an opinion about something if we never look into it? That's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not even biblically based. You don't make a judgment on biblical principles without looking into and verifying it first. I mean, that's a big mistake. That's why we have over 40,000 denominations.
Yes.
That's the reason. So we're going to let the evidence stand for itself. When Yeshua told the disciples to wait until when? In Acts chapters 1, he told them to wait until when? Until Pentecost, correct? All right. How many of you have studied Pentecost? The day of Pentecost. How many of you have studied the temple service during Pentecost? Okay. So you know there are sacrifices during that day.
Yes.
So wait a minute. I thought Jesus did away with the sacrifices on the cross, but then 40 days later, he's telling the disciples to wait for Pentecost, and says, wait another 10 days, that's 50, and in which the temple service, and by the way, where it says they were in a house, that's an idiom for the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash, the temple. They were in the temple courts. They had to be in the temple. Okay, so now Yeshua is telling the disciples, wait another 10 days for the day of Shavuot, for Pentecost, which includes sacrifices. The morning sacrifice and the afternoon sacrifice. The shaharit and the mincha. You got the morning and the afternoon. Then you have to wave the bread. You have to wave the sheep, the lamb, between the breads, on the altar. Well, wait a minute. I thought that Yeshua did away with all the sacrifices. How come he's telling the disciples to wait until Pentecost? And they have to bring a sacrifice because it's commanded in the Torah, when the temple is standing, you have to come up to Yerushalayim during the feast. Right?
Yes.
That's evidence number one.
Yes.
Let's go to Acts chapters 21. We have a Paul being confronted by the leadership in regards to Goyim, the Gentiles, right? And then we're going to read verse 20 on, right? And it says, and when they heard it, they glorified the Lord, and they said to him, you see, brother, how many myriads of Jews they are who have believed, and they are all zealous for the law. Well, that creates a little bit of a problem, because they told me that the law was done away with at the cross. But yet 20 years after Yeshua died and resurrected, we have thousands of Jews who believe and they're zealous for the Torah.
Yes.
Which is a problem. It's contradicting with the so-called message coming from the pulpit. And it's fascinating because when we mention this to leadership, they don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Okay? Next verse. They have been informed about you that you teach all the Gentiles, the Jews who are among the Gentiles, to forsake Moses, saying that they are not to circumcise their children, nor to walk according to the customs. What then? The assembly must certainly meet, for they will hear that you have come. Therefore do what we tell you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. What type of vow is that? Okay, so I want you to tell me, what is the temple service procedure of how you bring a Nazarite vow into the temple? Which room of the temple do you have to go to? What do you need to do? How many sacrifices you need to bring? And how you present yourself there? And what's the minimum amount of days that you can observe a Nazarite vow? Many people right now are saying, oh, I'm taking a Nazarite vow. It is an impossibility to take it right now. There's no Beit HaMikdash, there's no temple. So if you touch anything unclean, if you do something else, you have to start over. And that means you have to cut your hair, you got to start from scratch, you got to do the whole thing, and there's no temple. So people they have the zeal to want to follow the Torah, and they just do things crazy when they can't do it, and they cannot officiate and do it now.
Yeah.
I met a few people like that. Well, I'm in a Nazarite vow. I says, well, have you touched anything unclean? Oh yeah, well, did you go to Jerusalem? Oh, there's no temple. Then why are you taking a Nazarite vow?
Yeah.
You can't keep that one. I mean, I appreciate the zeal, and I appreciate the desire to want to do it. I mean, I appreciate that. But we have to learn when to draw the line. There are over 275 commandments that do not apply to us today because there's no temple.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're not important. It means that if the temple's standing, all of a sudden now they're binding. And there are commandments right now that in England I cannot keep. How many laws in England? How many?
Too many.
Too many, right? So that means that you live in freedom in England. Well, it's a lot more freedom than some of the places in Africa.
Yeah.
So, you have freedom in England, slowly eroding, like in America. And you call, let's use America, because I'm from there. The land of the free, I humble pray. Land of the free. But then I ask the Americans how many laws in the United States they don't even know. And they call themselves free, and they're willingly to pay taxes, and they're willing to submit under the Constitution, right? But when you talk about the Torah, that it's only 613, and not all of them can be kept. They don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Okay. So now what we have, check this out. Let's continue reading. It says, take them and purify with them and pay their expense so that they may shave their heads. Put your finger there. Let's go to chapter 18, verse 18. And it says, so Paul still remained a good while. Then he took leave of the brethren and sailed to Syria. And Priscilla and Aquila were with him. And he had his hair cut off at Cenchrea, for he had taken a vow. So expiration of the vow happened, and now he has to cut the hair off. How many days is the minimum amount of days to keep a Nazarite vow? Anybody? 30 days. 30 days. Minimum. Okay? So, if you get defiled, if you touch an unclean a woman in her menstrual cycle, or a dead, or whatever, you have to start from scratch over again. So, by the way, which type of animals do you take over to the Nazir? What type of sacrifice? You know, you need to make sacrifices to go there. Because right here in chapters 21 again, in verse 24 says, shave their heads, that all may know that those things that which said in form concerning you are nothing, but that you yourself will also walk orderly and keep the law. Verse 25. Now remember context. Can a Gentile do a Nazarite vow?
Well, if there's a temple.
Yeah, if there's a temple, can a Gentile take a Nazarite vow? No. Because in order to fulfill the vow, he has to go into the temple, and a Gentile's not circumcised, you're not allowed to go in the temple. So the next verse deals with a Gentile who are coming into the faith. They are part of the kingdom, but they cannot take a Nazarite vow. So listen to what it says. It says, but concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should observe no such thing, except that they keep themselves from offer to idols, from blood, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality. And people use that verse to say, you see, we don't have to keep any of that stuff at the temple.
Yeah, but they don't keep those forms. They don't even keep those forms, do they?
Interesting, yeah, I know.
Yeah, so you say, well, why don't you just keep those?
Did you know? But did you know that those four come from Leviticus?
Of course, yeah.
Leviticus and Ezekiel. But did you know that? Let's break those down, okay? Let's break those down for you. Talk about food, things offered to idols. Like halal meat. I don't eat halal meat.
No, sir.
It's everywhere.
You know, I don't touch it. It's everywhere, I don't touch it. When I go to South Africa, it's a nightmare. Because everywhere in South Africa, all the meat is halal. So a lot of the Hebrew people, they have co-ops. And they have farms, and they exchange with one another. It's a nightmare. Okay, that's why I don't eat in certain places. So we have sexual immorality. Where does that come from? Fornication. In the Bible, the act of intercourse between a man and a woman is marriage.
Yeah.
So where do you get fornication or immorality? Imperial worship or temple prostitution. It was widely practiced. And also, when you go into, if I'm a Roman citizen and I invite you to have dinner at my house, have a meal, then that's what Paul is talking about Rome and Corinthians. Okay? The first thing I needed to do is to feed you, and then we do libations, and we offer that meat to the gods. And then I have to, me as setting up the party for you, I have to provide entertainment for you. That means that I have to provide a strange woman. And it was the duty of the person who invited you to provide entertainment for you. That means having sex with some girl you don't know. That was Roman culture. And by the way, according to the culture, Roman women who were married to the Roman citizen knew that that would happen. And they have to marry knowing that that was going to happen. So Paul is saying, no, guys, that's adultery. All of that is adultery. You know, we don't live according to Roman imperial law. We live according to the customs of the Torah. You got it? So anyway, so the Gentiles who are coming in, who mainly were coming from where? From Roman Empire, they're dealing and they're willing to do all this stuff because it's part of their culture. So now they're saying, no, if you're going to be part of the community, you got to have the most basic levels of what is called kedusha, of holiness. Basic levels of cleanliness. It's called tameh tahor. You got to be tahor. You got to be cleansed. So in order for you to fellowship with us, you got to be in a state of cleanliness, right? So these are the most basic principles of how to be accepted in the synagogue. By the way, the Rambam, which is a rabbi, a very known rabbi, I read the Mishnah Torah about the temple. And this is what I study, a lot of it. It's really, really good. And he will say that any Gentile who are turning over to the God of Israel, in order for them to be considered the way to be cleansed, to be able to partake of certain things, he needs to do three basic things. 1, abstain from adultery. 2, abstain from idolatry. 3, from unclean foods. And the Rambam tells you that you do those 3 things, then you are on your way. Those are the most minimal requirements. By the way, let me give you an example from a church. When you had a church member who comes in, or someone who comes in for the first time, and he is drunk out of his mind, the first day he shows up, he sits in the back and he is drunk. I mean, he is so drunk he can barely walk. And then when you call to the front and say, anybody wants to accept Yeshua, right? And then he comes forward and he accepts the Messiah. You are not going to reject him that day. Right?
Right.
Come on, as you are. But the next Sunday, he shows up drunk out of his mind again. Oh, you let him slide because it's the second time. The third Sunday, he comes drunk out of his mind. You're going to go like, sit. And you're going to start telling him and say, look, you need discipleship. You need an accountability. And you also need to know that if you come to this congregation, you cannot come drunk. Right?
Yes.
So there are levels of what? Order in the congregation
Yes.
for somebody who's new.
Yes.
And the Torah can be the same way. Now, the whole system of religion uses those verses as an excuse not to keep the Torah.
Yes.
That makes no sense. Okay, so the next verse, let's continue. Verse 26. Read it with me, please, where you're at. Then Paul took the man, and the next day, having been purified with them, entered the temple to announce the expiration of the days of purification, at which time an offering should be made for each one of them.
Yeah.
It was a highly expensive type of sacrifice. You have to bring a chata'at, which is a sin sacrifice. And I want to explain a little bit about sin sacrifices. You know, in the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, it talks about sin. But what people don't realize is the word chata'at is best defined as consecration. Like a woman who gives birth. What did she do wrong? She didn't do anything wrong. She gave birth. So why does she have to bring a sin sacrifice to the temple after her days of 40 days out, or the amount of time whether she has a boy or a girl? Because she's going into the temple. And it's a place that is holy. And she's been defiled because she bled. So therefore now she brings a consecration sacrifice. It's consecration, chata'at. Many people say that sin is a breaking of a commandment. It can mean that, but it's mainly used as consecration. And even after you sin, if you transgress the Torah, and you ask for forgiveness, and then you bring the sacrifice in the temple, then you are consecrated. You are able to bring fellowship with the Lord again. You are in a state of kedusha, in a state of cleanliness now, that you're able to partake of the fellowship with the Lord. Is this making sense?
Yes.
It amazes me that we say, well, Yeshua died for me, and he took my shame, and he was this and this and that, but we've never looked into all these elements. I mean, I'm fascinated by the temple. So, let me describe it for you. Let's pretend that that's west. This is east, north, and south, okay? So, I enter by the eastern gate. First of all, I got to come through the south. Get down to the mikvah, all the baptism over there, because he had to purify himself. That's an immersion. He cannot come in without being immersed. Once he goes through the sogeg, which is a wall that divided the Gentiles from everybody else. Then he goes from the head, from one of the areas, he goes to the door. Then you have the court of the women, and there's 4 big rooms right over here. Right here is the oil, the room for the oil, for the wood. Only the fig was mainly used, and cedar wood was used for the fire. Never the vine and the olive for fire on the altar, ever. Okay? Then on the left, right over here, then you have a big room in which you have when you will come in and you finish for the Nazarite. You will go in there, and then you bring the hair, and you put it underneath on the fire pot. They boil the animal, and then they offer it for you. The room over here is for the lepers, and the room over there is for something else. The court of the women on top. Okay, and then we have the court of Israel. The court of the women, I'm sorry, the bottom and the top. And then you go 15 steps to the Nicanor gate, and then you have the court of Israel. And then after that, you have the Dushan, which is the court of the Levites. And then you have the great altar there. And you can only go so far. Every person can go so far. If you're not a Levite, you can go up to the court of the Levites and the altar. If you're a Kohen, a priest, then you can go into farther in, but only one person can go into the Holy Holies. And that's the high priest. Only one. Alright, this is important. So right now, so far, we have the evidence that in the first century, they were keeping the sacrifices for 40 years after Yeshua died and resurrected. Will you agree with me with that?
Yes.
Okay. Did they keep following the feast?
Yes.
So Paul kept Pesach, he kept Pentecost and Shavuot. And Sukkot, right?
Yes.
Well, there are 70 sacrifices in Sukkot alone.
Yes.
How many animals were slaughtered on the Day of Atonement? Come on now, we need to know this.
Hundreds of thousands, was it?
Thousands.
16. 16 on the Day of Atonement alone. But have you ever considered studying the book of Hebrews in the context of the Day of Atonement? And that's the problem. Because we look at the book of Hebrews and we assume that he is talking about the daily sacrifices. Right now we have 365 days, right? Just for the sake of argument. Let's just pretend back then was the same way. Okay? So, we're not talking about daily sacrifices in the morning lamb and the afternoon lamb. And all the sacrifices. You have the Olah, you have the Mincha, you have the Shelamim, you have the Chata'at, you have the Asham. 5 sacrifices. You have the free will, you have the grain, then you have the peace offering, you have the sin offering, then you have trespass, right? You got 5 that we'll do every day. For whoever came in doing any one of those. That's not including the Parah Adumah, which is a red heifer. That's not including some of the other sacrifices that were done. Okay? We're not talking about those. Those are daily sacrifices. We're talking about, in the book of Hebrews, only about the Day of Atonement. One day out of 365 days. We'll take you one day. And I believe the book of Hebrews is talking about those one day, not the whole year. Because it's clear that after Yeshua died and resurrected, they were still offering sacrifices. For 40 years they were keeping the feast.
Yes.
So we got a problem of context. We have a problem in which people, especially preachers, they are teaching about Yeshua being a sacrifice, a korbanot, but they don't have the slightest idea about what that is. And they don't even know the temple service or the tabernacle and what it entails. And that's the problem. Okay? Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, everybody go to Hebrews chapters 8, verse 7. Except for the Bible that you have. My sister? I don't know her name.
Oh, Diana,
That Bible was definitely right.
okay.
On that one. No, you got the right one. It's just that it's not going to help me with this one. Who's got a King James, New King James, any other Bible?
King James.
All right. I want you to go to chapters 8, verse 7. All right. And show me if the word covenant is in italics.
No. Yeah.
How many of your Bibles is in italics? Raise your hand. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 people, 8 Bibles, 9 Bibles that the word covenant is in italics. Now, if you see to this, if you watch the screen behind me, you're going to notice that this is the word covenant in italics. This is the word diatheke, which means covenant or contract or will or testament. Did you know that the word covenant is not found in the Greek there?
Priesthood,
I'm sorry?
for that first priesthood.
The first priesthood, yeah, that's the proper context. That's what we head into. That translation has it correct. Okay? But it says, if you read it with me, it says, for if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for a second. Well, wait a minute. The word covenant is not there. Now, by the way, every Baptist pastor that I've ever met, if there's one in the room, please forgive me. But every Baptist pastor that I've ever met myself uses that verse to say that the law is done away with. But when I tell them the word covenant is not there, they don't know what to do with themselves. So in the Greek, the word diatheke doesn't appear. Now read it without the word covenant. Would you do it again? Read it without the word. It's right on the screen. It says, for if that first have been faultless, then should no place have been sought for a second. It makes no sense in itself. What is the first? What is the second? Now his translation has it correctly, but 99% of all the translations don't have it. Because his translation is a Hebraic one. Right? But 99% of all Christians, and even Hebrew root people, they read the regular Bible, and they see italics, and they don't even know it's not there in the text. No, it's not in the Greek. You can look it up for yourself. Let's go to chapters 9, go to chapters 8, verse 13. 8, verse 13. Is it in italics? It's not supposed to be there either. As a matter of fact, the word new covenant is in italics in my Bible. Let's go to chapters 9, verse 1. The word covenant is in italics. Let me show you another problem that we have in the translation. Let's go to verse... where is it? I'm looking for it. Give me a second. Here we go. Verse 4. Verse 4. What does it say in some Bibles? I need someone to read it. Just one person read your version. That is not a Hebraic-based one. Anybody? 9:4. Come on, guys. Help me out.
To which belonged the golden censer?
Okay. He has golden censer. How many of your Bibles have golden altar? Now look around. Now how many of your Bibles says golden censer? Which one is it? It's two different things altogether.
Wow.
Censer, right?
Wow.
Yeah? But in some Bibles says golden altar. What does yours say, brother?
Which have the altar of incense and the ark of the contract.
That is wrong too.
Wow.
So even the Hebraic versions, in some things is right and some things is wrong. What does yours say?
Mine says the golden altar.
That's wrong too.
Burning incense.
Read that again. Golden altar.
Which had the golden altar for burning incense and the ark for the covenant.
That's completely...
Binding covenant.
These cannot be the golden altars. Two different things altogether. So now we're reading a translation that even the Hebraic Bibles don't even look into certain things, and there's two different things. You know what I did? I gave the New Testament to a friend of mine who's Orthodox in Jerusalem. And by the way, that's why I humbly request, if you keep it for your personal use, don't publish it, because I don't like to, when I talk about some of my friends, I don't want to put it out there, you know. It's not bad, it's just that I just like to, especially the Orthodox that talk to me all the time, I want to preserve their identity so they don't give them a hard time. We've been friends for 10 years and we studied together, and I gave him a New Testament in Hebrew. Because I told him, I said, will you do me a favor, I need your help. He's a Levite and he knows a lot about the temple. He also studies ancient Near Eastern studies too. So I said, I need your help. 5 years ago I was doing this research. And I said, would you look into the book of Hebrews, read it for me from the Hebrew, it was translated back into the Hebrew, and then give me your opinion. Just don't look at it as theological for you, because I know you don't believe in Yeshua. I'm not trying to convince you. You know, I would like for him to believe in him, but I'm not trying to convince him. I just need your help. And he read it, he called me back, he goes, man, it's fascinating. The first 2 chapters, I don't agree with, because it's presenting Yeshua as this divine Messiah, you know? But he goes, but the rest of the book is fascinating. It's like, it's really presenting Yeshua as this high priest of the order of Melchizedek, and it's really going into, it says, this is a very deep midrash. It's a method of study in Judaism. In other words, if you don't study Judaism, and you don't know what a midrashim is, and a midrash, according to the Hebrew roots, is not getting together in the living room and argue about a text without any context. That's not. I've been in a midrash in the yeshiva. I know what they look like. You know, and what we're doing is arguing. It's not a midrash. You know, what the Jews do is argue, but with midrash in mind. You see what I mean? So we've still got a lot of ways to learn, but that's okay. We're learning. All right. So he told me, he goes, man, it's fascinating. You know, and you know, I never really thought about it, but that kind of makes sense. You know, the way he's talking about it, right? And then I asked him, I said, do me a favor, can you read chapters 9, verse 4? Because it puzzled me. I mean, 5 years ago, and I've been studying the temple forever, and I still wouldn't get it, right? Because I knew there was some problems with that verse. I just couldn't find the information. And I said, well, what verse is it? Verse 4. And he read it. It took him 3 seconds. He goes, oh yeah, I know what that is. I said, what do you mean, what you know what that is? It's taking me years to figure it out. You just do it in 3 seconds? Because he speaks Hebrew. He understands the temple service. And he understood, and he told me what it was. He goes, that is the golden censer. That is the golden censer that the priest will take between the veil on the Day of Atonement. Only on the Day of Atonement do you have the golden censer taken inside the Holy of Holies. And that's why it mentions it like that. And that's why the translator, because if they don't study the temple service, they don't know which one it is. So they assume it's the golden altar. But the golden altar of incense has never been in the Holy of Holies. So if a Jew reads that, they go like, what in the world are they talking about? They don't know anything. Because the translator is not informed. You see what I mean? And even Hebraic translators, you know, like the writers that I know very well, you know, I've read their stuff from those 2 Bibles, you know, they lack, because not everybody knows everything. We always have to co-labor with one another. I mean, come on. You know, they're trying to do their best with what they can. So we're not criticizing them, it's just they're not focusing in some areas. You know what I mean? That's all it is. So if I will do a translation of the Bible, if I'm going to do something on the Hebrew, I look for Hebrew scholars to help me with that Hebrew. If I'm going to do something on the Leviticus, I'm going to look for the temple service scholars to help me with that. If I'm going to do about culture, I'm going to go to people who study anthropology. And you know, that way we can get the best evidence. It takes forever to do. You know what I mean? By the way, there's a Bible that I highly recommend you get. It's called the Archaeological Bible. The Archaeological Bible. Now, don't get it because of the translation. It's an NIV, and I hate the NIV translation. Forget about the translation. Just it's the nuggets about ancient Near Eastern cultures that you see. It's a study Bible. Okay, it's about this thick, and it's called the Archaeological Bible. If you want to study some of the stuff that I've been sharing with you this morning, you know, you don't have the time to read all the articles that we read. At least there you can get it in little bitty nuggets that you can get something out of. Okay? Or you can buy the book that you have that is Manners and Customs in the Ancient World that you got. Okay? That's another thing. So is this making sense now?
Yes.
So I got a question for you, and it's going to sound kind of mean, but I don't mean it that way. All right? And I do this everywhere I go. The letter to Ephesians was written to who?
Ephesians.
The letter to the Galatians was written to who?
Galatians.
James wrote the letter to who? The 12 tribes that are scattered abroad.
Yes.
Peter wrote the letters to who? 1st and 2nd Peter. Who did he write it to? Look it up. Verse 1, chapters 1. Peter, an apostle of Yeshua the Messiah. Alright? To the strangers who live in the diaspora, in the dispersion, in Pontus, Galatia, Asia, Bithynia. So now we're talking about modern day Turkey. 5 congregations that live there, and he's talking to the dispersed. He's not talking to the Gentiles. Let me ask you a question. What am I saying this for? If I go to your house, my sister, and I wait for the mailman to show up, and I grab your letters, and I open them. I'm breaking the law, right? In America, it's the same thing. I mean, if you want to pay my bills, go ahead. You know. But anyway, if I go to your house and I take your mail, there are laws protecting your privacy. As a matter of fact, I don't open any of my family's mail, even though I'm the head of the household. But if my wife gets a letter and my sons get letters, I respect their privacy.
Yes.
Unless they tell me I can. That's the proper way to do it. So you would agree with that, right?
Yes.
So, okay, if that's the case, then what gives us the right to open letters that were never addressed to us? We don't think like that. Oh, well, that's scripture. Oh, I understand it. That's scripture. But when it was originally written, it was not written. You need to understand this, and this is controversial. When these letters were written, their intention was not to be scripture.
Yes.
When the letters were written, they were written as a correction letters, comfort letters, interaction between congregation, trying to deal with certain issues, and then they put it together and they canonized it.
Yes.
And then somebody, some great genius, put in chapters and verses. So now it's like, okay, let me ask you a question. You got a book, a very expensive book, right? You spend $100 on the book. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know. A little bit of thing okay, and then would you read it? Would you read it all the way from the beginning to the end? I mean, you do research. You're going to spend a lot of money on that book. You're going to read who the author is. You're even going to see how it's written. Because if it's like too many small letters and, you know, it's like not easy to read, you go, I don't think so. Right? Correct?
Yes.
You're going to see if you have the free one on the internet.
Yes.
Right? So you're going to find out about the author, how he's qualified, all that stuff, and then you're going to read the book from beginning to end. Correct?
Yes.
Big investment, but we don't do that with the Word of God. We buy the Bible and we read it starting in the middle. And mind you, every church is sending you back to Genesis because they said, what's starting John 1:1? In the beginning.
Yes.
I mean, even the church is sending you to Genesis, but they don't know it. So you read the Bible from the middle of the book. The most amazing document we read from the middle of the book. With a bad translation, right? With misinformation. And it's not the translator's fault, really. Because they're just trying to pursue their agendas. I mean, at least they printed it. It's up to us to research it. You know, and the thing about it is we can't mention this to a lot of our Christian pastors. They're not open-minded to it. It's really amazing to me. Yes, ma'am.
What about the letters in Revelation to the church?
How about what?
The letters in Revelation, about the letters to the churches in Revelation.
What's your question? I'm sorry, I'm not...
No, because you're talking about letters, like, you're talking about, like, Peter and all the letters that were to, like, the congregation.
Oh, the letters in the book of Revelation. That's right. To the 7 churches. Exactly. Thank you. Right. So now we're taking the book of Revelation. We read the book of Revelation now. You start me there now. You didn't have to do that. And then we start reading the book of Revelation. We never study imperial worship. We never study imperial Rome. We never study where was John at? The island of Patmos. You know, and that's my point. That's what I'm trying to take all this time to give you foundation. So when I get into this, we cannot formulate arguments about things that we never studied. This is the #1 problem in the Hebrews movement. People that are starting out early, like 2, 3, 4 years, they're experts in everything now. They know the calendars, they know everything. I've been doing this 17 years and I don't know anything. I mean, I just learned some stuff the last week that I never heard before. I mean, it's crazy. The other day I'm reading something and I go like, oh my, I never knew that about that verse that I've read 1,000 times. And you know, it's like, why do we take that attitude? And now we're experts.
Yes.
I don't understand that. It's like, listen, if we're wrong, we're wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll change it. It's no big deal. I mean, I'm not gonna, my ego is no longer like that. It's like, if I'm wrong, I'll tell you guys, I did a teaching, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I just didn't have the information.
Hallelujah.
And what's the problem? You know how I can do that? Because I put myself in situations in all the areas of my life that I don't know what I'm doing, and I have to be humble by it. I do that on purpose. I do certain things away from ministry, in my personal fitness, in my personal stuff, that I have to do in order for me to recognize there's always somebody who knows more than me. And it doesn't matter whether how young or how old, they're going to take care, they're going to do certain things to my body that I got to be humble, and I got to say, I got to learn.
Yes.
If that is true in the physical, then why can't we take that approach into the Word of God? Keep it up in mind.
Yes.
I mean, is it going to be so bad to say I was wrong about something? What's the problem? I mean, the more we learn, the less we know.
Yes.
And you know, and whatever you believe today, in 5 years it'll change.
Yes.
Trust me.
Yes.
You know? I used to be very, very much into certain dogmatic things. And now I'm looking at it more like, man, I can't believe I was so dogmatic of that one thing. You know how many friendships I alienated because I thought I was right and then found out 5 years after that that I was wrong?
Yes. Yes.
And we all do it anyway. We all do it. And you know why we all do it? Because we have a zeal to do the right thing. We really truly want to do the right thing. It's not that we want to be mean to people. We've been lied to. Let me ask you a question. I was talking to Marcus about this. Marcus and I about it. He says, when you come out of the systems of religion, have you ever considered studying the steps that you go through compared with the steps of grief?
Oh.
I always know when somebody else in the Hebrews movement based on the steps of grief.
Yes.
Because we go through all the steps. Denial. What? His name cannot be Jesus. Yeshua. It's Jesus. You know, and you argue with somebody until you find out well, Yeshua was Jewish. That's right. I mean, did he speak Greek? Oh, he spoke Greek. Jewish guy speaking Greek in the 1st century. It doesn't compute. You follow? I mean, you can tell me Aramaic. I may go for that one. But Greek, come on. Anyway, so then you start going through the feast. What? Christmas? Can't be. Easter? No more pork? Oh, and then your parents don't like you, your brothers don't want to see you, your sister, your wife is mad at you, you know, and you go through all the steps of grief. You get to denial, and then you go to bitterness. I don't want to talk to anybody in the church. I went through that. Have you ever considered doing that? Never, right? And when you compare your life spiritually in the Torah to the steps of grief, and you consider then you know where everybody is. Or we always have this, before I get going, because I'm waiting for some people to keep coming, because I already know how you all work. So I'm giving you a little introduction, you know. Puerto Ricans are the same way, by the way. I mean, this is a worldwide problem. You know, that's okay, so I understand. Okay, so in what was I saying?
No, before that. Friendships.
Friendships, yeah. We go through all those friendships and we alienate all kinds of people. And now, all of a sudden, we start recognizing when we study a little more that, you know, all of this process is there so we learn how to tolerate one another. I went to Israel and I have really good friends. And there was one particular rabbi who was a friend of mine. And he's amazing. He's amazing. He's from England, as a matter of fact. He's a really nice guy, very humble. He's a Breslov. This guy, man. He went to my house for like 4 days. Talk about prayer. I've never met anybody with so much kavanah, so much meditation in prayer. You know, when you look at this guy pray, you go like, truly the Lord hears him. I'm telling you. Because you can tell that he, from the heart. And he told me, he goes, Rico, I'm afraid that in Judaism, prayer has become an exercise of a requirement of a religion. It's no longer with meditation. And he said this, he goes, you know, according to Judaism, they teach us that a prayer without meditation of kavanah, with your heart, is like empty words. A vain repetitions. Isn't that what the Bible talks about? Anyway, so what happens is that I'm meeting with him, and I tell him something about Joseph. We're talking about the dispersal of Israel. We're having a really good conversation. And then all of a sudden, I said something to him that he goes like, wow, that was really cool. And then he asked me, he says, how long have you been following the Torah? Up to that point, it was 14 years. And at the time, my son was 14 years old. Okay? And my argument with my son was that he's a know-it-all. Know-it-all. He thinks he knows everything. Typical 14-year-old. You know, they know everything. By the way, it's normal. It's normal. She's 15. It's normal. Understand that when I'm picking on you, it's okay. Okay, I'm so sorry. You know, but it's normal. I want you to know that this is normal. We all been through it. Look cool. Now, when you're 18, 19, and 20, then you're going to think like you could be on your own. It's normal too. It's normal too. And when you're 22 and 23, then you really think you're going to know everything, and that's okay. So understand, this is the process of growing. I did that with my kids. I took my son when he was 8 and 9, 10, and I sat him down and said, son, I need to do this because by the time you're 13, 14, 15, you're going to act like this. When he was 14 years old, 15, I said, I need to sit down with you because by the time you're 17, 18, 19, you're going to think like this. And I did that all throughout. And the reason why we're close now, and he never got into drugs, and he never got into anything, I asked him. He goes, how come you never rebel? He goes, because you ruined my whole childhood. You told me everything that was going to happen, and I found myself confronted with everything you said, and I had no excuse to rebel. So anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. You see what happens when I don't get sleep? Anyway, so the rabbi tells me, man, that was really profound. And I felt like, wow, you know, a big rabbi like this guy telling me that I said something smart. That's pretty cool. And he says, how long have you been following the Torah? I said, 14 years. And he said this, it was fascinating. He goes, oh, so you just had your bar mitzvah. A bar mitzvah is the rite of passage from 13 years old when you become now a grown man, a young man. And I started laughing. I got it. And I'm thinking, wow, when I left the office, I was cracking up. I'm thinking, I'm acting like my 14-year-old. Yeah. Spiritually, yes. I was acting like my 14-year-old. Yeah. That means that spiritually, I'm only 17 years old. You see? Yes. I'm not that far from you right now. Okay? Physically, I'm 49, but spiritually, I'm 17 years old. So, when somebody comes new, and then I start looking not only the steps of grief, but also childhood. Yes. And you always go through the stages of touching everything. Like little kids who want to touch everything, you know? They're so curious about everything. They're walking, you know, they start crawling, and then they start running, crawling, and they start not to fall down and get up. And then they start touching everything. How many of you have kids like that? They touch everything. And you say, don't do it. And they go, they get burned, and you have to go pick them up, right? That's exactly what happens in the Hebrew roots. People come in, they're first in denial, they go through all that stuff, they start walking a little bit. The first excitement is Yeshua. The second is Shabbat. The third one is the feast. After that is, after all that stuff, then you start saying, I learned 2 or 3 Hebrew words, I'm all knowing. You know? And then after that, you start going, then you start touching everything. You gotta listen to everybody. Every teacher. Oh man, you just can't have enough. Because you gotta touch everything. You gotta know about the Hebrew, the calendar, the name. You gotta know about the 2 house, 1 house, 3 house. You touch everything, right? And then after that, you go to the why stage. But why? But why? Why? You know, it doesn't matter what explanation you give somebody, they go, but why? And they challenge you. Why? Why do you have to do this? Why do we have to do this? Why do I have to wear this? Why do I have to do this? How come this? How come that? How? Why? So I'm looking at it, I'm going like, I know that's where you're at.
Yes.
So it's helped me in a way to deal with people,
yes.
To understand that this is the growth that we go through. This is normal. So you see, as yourself, 15 years old, dealing with all these new challenges and dealing with all these new things that you deal with that we no longer deal with, but in reality, in the Bible, we do deal with it, and it's not easy. And sometimes that's why young people, when they come to the Hebrew roots, they see the adults, and they're going like, they're acting worse than kids. Right?
Yes.
They're arguing about stupid stuff.
Yes.
They divide congregations over differences. It's like you have a friend who says, well, you don't like me, I don't like you either. In the meantime, there are verses in the Bible that there's no explanation for, and we're still trying to reinvent the wheel, giving them interpretation based on spiritual application. Ladies and gentlemen, even Paul told us, the spiritual first, the physical then the spiritual. We have to stop sometimes to over-spiritualize everything. The Bible is a concrete legal document. It doesn't mean over-spiritualization of everything. Yes, there are times that you use it. Yes, you can extrapolate a lot of spiritual applications. Absolutely. But when you only apply the spiritual and you forget about the concrete, then you got a problem. And that's the problem we have. That we have spiritualized the whole book of Hebrews. Well, the Lord understands my heart. Yes, the Lord knows it's wicked. That's why He gives us the Torah, so we can learn.
Hallelujah.
All right, so now, with that being said, let's talk about the book of Hebrews. I think we got more people that are not coming in here. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
The reason why I'm taking extra time is because we as believers in Yeshua, we never consider exactly how the temple service functions. And did you know that there are different types of sacrifices? You have the mi'olah, which is the offering that is completely burnt. You have the mincha, which is the flour offering. You have the shelamim, which is a peace offering. And by the way, you don't have to sin to bring this three. This one is consecration. Or if you do something that you're not supposed to, you can bring it to consecrate yourself. You defile yourself from the temple. You got to be consecrated to go into the temple. This one, Hashem, is a trespass against your neighbor or against the Creator. Okay? So, did you know there are three types of sin in the Bible? Oh, He died for my sins. Which ones? I mean, think about it. When people say, well, Yeshua died for my sins. Which ones? Because there's 3 levels of sins in the Bible. How many levels of transgressions are there in the law of England? I mean, are you going to get the death penalty because you just ran a red light? Are you going to get the death penalty because you were going too fast down the street? Now, you will get the death penalty if you tell people, or if you grab the car, you are drunk, and then you say, I will kill people. And then you go 100 kilometers an hour, and you see somebody, and you just veer the car to kill them. That's premeditation. So that means that based on the intent, the transgression, right?
Yes.
Based on the intent, then you have a heavy penalty, correct?
Yes.
But we never consider that in the Torah. We throw the word sin and sacrifices in the same sentence, and we don't realize that you have avon pesha chataat. You said, watch this. In Exodus 34, verse 6 and 7 says, and the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, Adonai, Adonai Elohim, merciful, gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth. Keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. So the only ones who forgive that is really the Creator. Alright? So now watch this. We got iniquity, transgression, and sin. We have iniquity, avon. Perversity, that is moral, evil, fault, iniquity, mischief, punishment, iniquity. That's rebellion. Okay? Then you have pesha. That's a revolt, national revolt. What Israel did by turning away from the covenant was national revolt. They committed pesha. But we're not talking about ma'al. That's another type of sin that you never know about. And I'll give you an example about ma'al, what ma'al is. Ma'al is when someone deliberately sins directly against him. And let me tell you how you will do that. You speak against the people, the land, and the covenant. You're sinning against him. Why? Because the land, he gave as a gift to Abraham. The people, he gave as a gift to Abraham. And the kingship, what was the other one that I said? And the covenant, he gave to the people. And if you attack those things, you are directly transgressing against the one who gave them. Remember the guy in Jericho who went to war and Ai?
Yes.
And then he took all the gold.
Yes.
He committed ma'al. That was sin against God. That's why he had to die. When you sin against the Lord, you die. There's no more, because now that's a direct, the guy collecting the sticks on Shabbat, it was premeditated. It was high-handed. It's like he understood what he was doing and he decided to do whatever he wanted to do. I guess it's like saying, I don't care what the God says, I'm going to do what I want to do. And the Lord says, really? I'm the king, you're not. Dead. And people have an issue with that. You know? I didn't mean, you guys are wicked. You guys are laughing if somebody died like that. I didn't mean it to be funny. So people are going around saying that we are now a priest of the order of Melchizedek. By the way, I got to make a correction. I used to teach that. And I was wrong. I have to fix that teaching, and I have to say, let me explain to you what I mean. Where in the Bible is there one verse that says that all of us are priests in the order of Melchizedek? It says that we're a nation of priests in Exodus chapters 19. But I'm talking about specifically what we've been told now, that we are priests in the order of Melchizedek. Where does it say anywhere in the New Testament that we are priests in the order of Melchizedek? That we are priests, that it literally says priests in the order of Melchizedek. I mean, the only book that uses the word Melchizedek is the book of Hebrews, and it's in reference to Yeshua. So now there's a movement going around saying that we are all the Melchizedek movement, and now the Levitical movement is done away with, it's never going to be in. And we got a problem. The book of Ezekiel clearly tells us that the temple will be restored. Now, you don't have to understand it. Don't speak against it. I beg of you, please. If you understand ancient Near Eastern history, you will never talk against the temple of the Lord. Because he called that holy. And by the way, he called the Levites his holy people. And he called the Levites his inheritance. I mean, that's some heavy-duty stuff. So if he touched, what happened to Korah? When Korah, he wanted the job of Aaron and Moses, he died. And he was a descendant of the Levites. But he committed, repeat after me, encroachment. If you play American football, you know what that is. Encroachment, 10 yards, you know, because you're encroaching in somebody else's space. So if the Lord called the Levites to do a specific job, and he called them, and he says, you are my holy people, you are my holy priesthood, his holy people. And you say, no, they're done away with. You just call God a liar. I mean, my Lord, people don't, the stuff they're saying is crazy. That is encroachment. You are challenging the authority of the king. And like I told you yesterday, my king deserves to be respected. And if we don't understand it, we don't understand it. Just say it so. But please don't touch certain areas that we don't study. Okay?
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Alright, so now. So we have chata'at. Chata'at means an offense. Sometimes habitual sinfulness. On a penalty, occasion, sacrifice, creation, consecration. It means really the best definition. This is taken from the Strong's. The best definition is consecration. And it deals with a lot of holiness, purity laws in the temple. Alright? Now, in Hebrews chapters 10 verse 26, can you read this with me please? For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sins. Because there was no sacrifices for willful, rebellious sin in the Bible. Let's go to Psalm chapters 51. Because everybody who wants to do away with Yeshua, they quote you that Psalms as an argument.
Yes.
Right? And when everybody that quotes me that Psalm, I always ask them the question. What is that in reference to? The regular daily sacrifices? Or a particular sacrifice? So, what was the reason that Psalm 51 was written for? What was the reason that Psalm 51 was written? Help me out. David had the affair with Bathsheba, right?
Yes.
Bathsheba, and he committed sin. Willful. Why? Because he knew she was married, and he did everything premeditated. According to the Torah, that is death. Okay? So, you read verse 12. It says, restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with your generous spirit. And I will teach transgressions your ways, and sinners will convert to you. Deliver me from guiltiness, blood guiltiness, O Elohim, the Elohim of my salvation. My tongue shall sing aloud of your righteousness. Adonai sfatai tiftach, ufi ha'iti leitecha. Says, open my lips, and my mouth shall declare your praise. And then it says, for you do not desire sacrifice, or else I will give it. You do not delight in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart you will not despise. Okay, wait a second, I don't understand this. But obviously, David understood sacrifices were important, because he set aside a lot of money so that Solomon can build a temple, which included sacrifices.
Yes, yes,
So I'm confused.
yes.
Or is it because David understood that what he did was rebellion against God himself, and that he understood that there was no sacrifice that would atone for him? Only the mercy of God. The king can extend mercy. Let me give you the example of it. Remember when Esther walked into the court of the king, unannounced? That was a willful act. And the only one who forgave her was the king. No one can forgive her. Only the king extended the scepter and forgave her. What do you think Yom Kippur is for? Yom Kippur is the day in which the king sits on his throne, opens the books of judgment, and then determines who is righteous and who is not. That's why the month of Tishri is actually balances. It's a balance. Judgment. Interesting. Right? So Yom Kippur is the key to the book of Hebrews. First we need to know, how many of you have read the tractate of the Mishnah, Tamid, Midot, and Yomam? Tamid, Midot, Yomam. Those are the chapters of the Mishnah that specifically speaks to you about everything that was done in the temple on the Day of Atonement. So I want to challenge you, and I don't want to do it in a bad way. Please don't be offended. That's not my intent. But honestly, can we honestly open the book of Hebrews and have an opinion when we've never taken the time to study all of these angles? We don't even know in what context. We know there's some words that are missing, some words that are added on in the Hebrew, in the English. We have things that are called like the altar of incense versus the altar, the golden censer. Then we have the word covenant, who is not in one verse. Then, oh my God, I mean, hello, we don't even know how many sacrifices were done on the Day of Atonement. We don't even know, how many times does the priest go into the Holy of Holies? How many? Come on now, we need to know this. This is the New Testament, guys. 5 times. You know, he needs to bathe, he needs to change, he got to go in. Which prayers did he do on the Day of Atonement? We have all those prayers saved for us. The Orthodox has saved it in the Siddur, and they know it. I can literally do the whole service on Yom Kippur exactly the way it was on the Day of Atonement in the Second Temple period. They preserve it. They even tell you which way he goes in, how they hold the incense. I studied this stuff because I want to learn how to do it. I could never do the service, but I just want to learn. You know? Because I look at the book of Hebrews, then I'm thinking like, how can we understand the book of Hebrews when you live in England? I'm from Puerto Rico and I live in the United States. I'm not raised in the Middle Eastern culture. I know Hebrew, but not that extensive that I can really look at every Hebrew text and understand everything. So it's like, wait a minute, I don't understand. So I'm trying to bring understanding so that you say, before you get into an argument on the book of Hebrews with anybody, consider the fact that there's a lot of information we need to look into.
Yes.
And before you come into an argument in your congregation and you start arguing with leadership about the book of Hebrews, and you haven't looked at all those angles, please consider just not saying anything until we're better equipped to do so. Because then we're going to be a stumbling block. How do I know? Ask Rico, how do you know?
How do you know?
Because I did it. I'm guilty of that, man. I gave a pastor hell on the book of Hebrews. And then he asked me a few questions I didn't know, and I went like, okay. And go to Israel. Go to Israel. I went there in 2004 for the first time. I've been 12 times already since then. Okay, I'm going back in November. Praise the Lord. Okay? And I went to the yeshiva, and I'm asking questions, and I'm challenging this rabbis, and the rabbi says, well, do you know this? For example, let me ask you some of the questions the rabbi asked me. If this this Jesus is the Messiah, then how come he died on Passover and not on Yom Kippur? If this Jesus is the Messiah, then how come he died outside the camp and not inside the altar where the lamb was put on for the afternoon sacrifice? I went like, I have to go to my room, I have to get on my face and repent, because I went to Israel thinking I know anything and I didn't know anything. And I was becoming a stumbling block. So I asked the Father, please show me. I spent the whole day researching, looking, all that stuff. I found the answer. I went back to the rabbi the next day and I said, I'm surprised you don't know. Literally, I did this, man. I said, I'm surprised you don't know. You know, still the arrogance, you know? And I told him, and I said, because Passover is for individual redemption. Yom Kippur is for corporal, for the whole community. That's why on the Day of Atonement, no one can bring a sacrifice, only the high priest. There were 15 to 16 animals that were offered on that day alone. Okay? No one can do it. Because that's the day that the person that he chose to intercede on behalf of Israel can present himself. And by the way, if we are high priests, many people say, oh, we are priests of the order of Melchizedek. How many of you heard that song? Some of you are going to get upset with me. Enter the Holy of Holies. We enter. That's wrong! And I love the song. Beautiful song. Paul Wilbur song. Beautiful song. It's wrong? Sorry. Because if we have access to the Holy of Holies, then what do we need Yeshua for? People always get mad at me in this one. But I'm thinking, listen guys, we have access to the holy place through Yeshua, but we never have access to the Holy of Holies. Because God cannot change. He, from the beginning, set aside the high priest to do the work. Yeshua now is our high priest to do that work. So, let me ask you a question. Where is Yeshua officiating today?
Heaven.
Do we have access to heaven?
Yeah.
Physically?
No.
Okay.
Doesn't Scripture say that we can go bold into the throne room?
But it doesn't say the Holy of Holies.
And it's
The altar is the throne room of God too. You see what I mean? So, how many veils were there in the first century? Which one rented? How many veils were there? 4. There was one on the big door of the temple, 76 feet high. I don't know how many meters that is, because Americans will still work backwards. You know. And then it was this thick, the veil was this thick. Then you have 2 veils in the Holy of Holies. 2 veils that divided it up. And then you have the one in the second story. Okay, so those 4. People don't know which one rented. So they keep saying now the Holy of Holies rented. Where does it say that anywhere in the Bible? It doesn't say that. So again, when you study the temple service, it's going to put things in better perspective. It's going to give you better context. It does not in any way diminishes the work of Yeshua. In any way. If anything, it gives them more authority. Because if we are now priests, and then we say we are now priests in the order of Melchizedek, are we committing encroachment?
Yes.
Putting ourselves in a job that no one says, are we Israel or are we a whole priesthood? This is something to consider, okay? Are you mad at me yet? No. The day's still early. Day's still early. Alright. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask something else. How can Yeshua be the Lamb of the Lord? Because he died outside the camp. That's another question they asked me. He died outside the camp, not inside the altar. If he would have died inside the temple, that would have constituted him as a human sacrifice, and that's not acceptable. And Yeshua is not a human sacrifice. Okay? It's a free will offering. Or a sham, trespass. He took the shame of Israel upon himself. So let me ask you a question. Why did he have to meet John the Baptist to be declared? Had to meet John the Baptist to be the Lamb of God? There's a lot of arguments about that. But why did he have to meet John the Baptist? And that was his cousin. And instead of John the Baptist said, cousin, where have you been all these years? First thing he says, behold the Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. By the way, the Lamb of God, let me ask you a question. Is the lamb sacrificed for sanctification, reconciliation, redemption, salvation, or consecration? Which one?
Redemption.
Redemption. So the lamb sacrifice is not for justification, for sanctification, for reconciliation. It's for redemption. Do you know the one that takes away the sins of Israel? It's a Yom Kippur goat. That's the one who takes the sins of Israel away. That's why you have the whole ritual on the Day of Atonement. One is dedicated to the Lord, and the other one is let go. Exact same. Right? Boy, would this be a controversial topic in any church. Because then they would assume that I'm saying that Yeshua is not the Lamb. Of course he is. But he also fulfilled the requirement of the Pagaduma, the red heifer.
Yes.
And he, by the way, and I submit to you today that he fulfilled the requirements of Yom Kippur. The rituals of Yom Kippur, he also did it on Passover. He's not coming to die again. Correct? So let me give you an example. On the Day of Atonement, you have to have 2 scapegoats, exactly the same way. The same. They got to look exactly the same. Okay? So you will put lots, you cast lots, one for the Lord and one for Azazel. And then you will tie the red thread, the crimson thread, on that one particular way, on the one for the Lord. Everybody knew that's the one for the Lord, and the other one for Azazel. So you need to have 2 exactly the same, right? Okay, so where is that requirement fulfilled in the life of Yeshua? Yes, sir?
Yeshua Barabbas.
Man, you got a good teacher, man. Who teaches you this? You don't know this? Anyway, did you know that Barabbas' name was what? Yeshua. So now you have Yeshua and Barabbas. You say, well, Rico, how can you compare Barabbas? He was a murderer. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that the same goals they both had. Barabbas was a revolutionary trying to restore the kingdom, but by force, through war. And Yeshua was trying to restore the kingdom, but by the plan of redemption. So that the whole goal was the same, but their method was different. Remember that. So I got a question for you. So you have 2 exactly the same. One is let go, and the other one is put on the tree. Now, what do you do when you take out the lots from casting lots from the priests, casting lots for the Azazel and for the Lord? What happened to the lots? It says for Kadosh Adonai, holy unto the Lord. Okay, Yod Hevav, holy unto Yod Hevav. They will take the lot and they place it between the horns of the scapegoat. Okay, right? Now it's interesting when Yeshua dies on the tree, what do they put above his head? They put a title, right? Yeshua HaNotrim B'Melech HaYodim. Okay, Yeshua, Yod,
Yes.
HaNotrim, Hey, V'Melech, Vav, HaYodim, Hey.
Yes.
So an acrostic is Yod Hey Vav Hey. It's not saying that he's the Father, it's saying that he is the one dedicated to the Father. You see all the elements of Yom Kippur happening on the crucifixion? No one ever takes notice? Let me give you another example. Let's go to John 19. By the way, the Torah tells us that a priest could not rend his garments. In the book of Numbers it tells us that the garment of the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, was double stitched. Are you guys enjoying yourselves so far?
Yes.
Okay, it's a little different, right?
Yes.
How many things have you heard that are new?
No, loads.
Okay, make sure you verify it. Don't believe anything I say. Verify everything I say. Verify it. Please, look it up. Okay? And I have a teacher, by the way. Don't think that I'm just reinventing the wheel by myself. I have a teacher. His name is Joseph Good. And he is the authority of the temple service in the Western world. My personal teacher. We're doing a conference next weekend. And we're doing a temple conference in January for 4 straight days in Orlando, Florida. We already filled up 70 spots already. Okay? Huh? So we already have 70 spots, people coming from all over the place. We're going to spend 4 days, 5 sessions, 1.5 hours each session for 4 days. We're going to have 20 sessions in 4 days. It's a lot of information. 3 teachers. We're going to be doing only temple service. Okay? So when you go into what chapter? What book? John 19. I'm going to show you how the temple service is highlighted here, but we never really catch on to it. When you look into chapters 19 and you read in verses 20 all the way down, specifically in verse 23, it says, "Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Yeshua, took his garments and made 4 parts, each soldier a part, and also a tunic." Listen to what it says, a tunic. "Now the tunic was without seam, woven from top in one piece." Now, you got to ask the question, why would John make mention of something that to us in the Western world, we don't need to know? He died, he's going to resurrect, give me the highlights. Typical male attitude. Why are you giving me all these pieces of information? I don't need to know about the tunic. Why do I care that the soldiers took it and divided it in 4, but there was one tunic, a white one, that they did not rent? Think about it. You know, it's like saying, and then it says, "And they cast lots, therefore they said among themselves, let us not tear it, but cast lot for it, whom it shall be, that the scripture may be fulfilled." And they quote the scripture, right? Can the high priest rent his garments? They have a double stitch. Let's go to Matthew chapter 26.
Exactly, yes.
This is all the introduction, okay? Then we'll take a break and then come back. Is that good? Because I don't want to rush this one. I think it's important. When you read in verse 62 forward, "And the high priest arose and said to him, Do you answer nothing? What is it that this men testify against you?" But Yeshua kept silent. And the high priest answered and said to him, "I adjure you by the living Elohim, that you should tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Yeshua said to him, "It is as you said. Nevertheless, I said to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming in the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, "This he has spoken blasphemy. What further need we have to witness this? Look now, you have heard blasphemy." But what did he do? He rent his garments.
Yes.
How many days was the high priest taken away from his house before the Day of Atonement?
7.
7 days. How many times was he sprinkled with the ashes of the red heifer and the waters of sanctification? On which days? On the 3rd and the 7th day. They even found him an extra wife. Not that he had more than one, but they want to make sure that he is isolated for 7 days and he has one wife, because the high priest can only have one wife. And all of a sudden now, they were afraid that if his wife dies in the middle of the week, now he cannot officiate during Yom Kippur. So they did 2 things. They found him another wife in case his wife dies. He never had any intimacy with her. They just sit over there, young lady, making sure that his wife doesn't die. Just don't pray his wife dies, okay? Anyway, so and then the next thing was pray for me. When I get tired, I get sick. Anyway, but I find that very peculiar. But they also had another high priest. They also had another high priest in line in case he got defiled or he cannot do the work, then somebody else can do it. It's interesting that now you have Yeshua, who is going to be a high priest. But you notice that Yeshua's ministry never started. It did not begin until John the Baptist died. Why? So don't answer. Let them answer. Yes, sir.
Was it like John the Baptist had to pass the mantle over to him?
Well, yeah. Yes, and let me submit something else. He can't really pass the mantle because Yeshua is not a Levite. John the Baptist is a Levite of the line of Zechariah, of the line of Ahavah. Okay, and it's really interesting because, yes, spiritually you're right. He just passed on the mantle. But if John the Baptist would have been alive,
then Yeshua cannot be a high priest. Because John the Baptist was a kosher high priest. The priest, Caiaphas, how many sons did Ananias have? Come on now, we need to know this. This is important because to understand the reason why the Lord has such issues in the first temple with the temple service, it was not with the temple service that the Lord had issues with, it was with the corruption of the temple service. Right? And who was the high priest? Ananias, right? Okay, Ananias. Ananias had how many sons? Nice guess. 5. You almost half true. Halfway.
Extras.
You did good, you did good. Plus, Caiaphas, this guy here, who was his son-in-law. And they were Sadducees, and they bought themselves into the priesthood. They paid for it. They were Levites, but they were not of the line of Aaron. They were not the legitimate heirs of the king, of the priesthood. You follow what I'm saying? So now, Yeshua is dealing with a profane priesthood. The office of the priesthood is holy, but the people officiating are corrupt. The White House, the office of the president, I respect. The president, I could care less. And I can say that because he's my president, not yours. Thank the Lord. Okay? It's the truth, and I'm not going to hide it from anybody. Unfortunately, we're going on a road that is dangerous. Okay, so the same thing in the Bible. We have to separate the office from the person. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So in the first century you have the high priesthood was Ananias. He was no longer officiating, but he had control of all of the shops in the temple and the Mount of Olives. The royal stoa, which is the southern part of the temple, he had all the shops. He would charge taxes. He would charge rent. Okay, and the Mishnah tells you that the rabbis were having a problem because during the great holidays, they would raise the prices to the point that they used to charge an extra tax, even for changing the money. That's why Yeshua turned over the tables. Not because he was against the temple, he was against the corruption by the leadership, not the regular Levites, but the high priest. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. So now you have Ananias, who is the father-in-law of Caiaphas. And then Caiaphas is the high priest. So on the Day of Atonement, they used to set aside 2 high priests in case one got defiled. Then the other can go in. So Caiaphas does what? Rent his garment, which is not allowed. The moment he rents his garment, he is disqualified for the priesthood. Huh? Because he was not thinking. I got a few words I could share with you about that, but he wasn't thinking straight. Let's just stop. Right? You know, because to do that, renting your garments, it was a huge affront. That's why Aaron was not allowed to rent his garments when his sons died. You know why? Because renting your garments is a sign of mourning. And in the temple, you're not allowed to mourn. Because in the ancient world, they used to do mourning rituals all the time. That's why they let their hair long. And they used to cut the corners of their beards. You know, and that's why the Torah says, do not cut the corners of, this area right here. It used to be apostolic worship. It was Catholic worship on the world gods. And they used to do all kinds of mourning rituals. And in the Bible, the Torah says, no, the temple of the Lord is for life. It's not for mourning. So that's why you're not supposed to do those things. You follow? Yes. So when he rented his garment, now he cannot officiate that day. So who steps in? Come on now. If this guy gets disqualified, who steps in now? Yeshua. But Yeshua cannot step in on the earthly tabernacle, or the earthly temple. Because even though he will be a high priest, he doesn't have legal jurisdiction to be the high priest of the earthly tabernacle, of the earthly temple. Why? Because God says only the sons of Levi can do it, and only the sons of Aaron can be the high priest, right? And God cannot lie, correct? Yes? Yes. So therefore now, the only place that Yeshua has legal rights to officiate It's in the heavenly tabernacle, which we don't have any legal jurisdiction. Neither do the Levites can do that. That's the only way he can be the high priest. Okay? Are you with me?
Yes.
Let's take a break. Take a break for about 20 minutes, and then we'll get into the teaching.